So we don't have today. We'll be just going over when they pull over a car, what their departmental policy is. So if you ever let's go, the video go be probably about 20 or 30 minutes. But if you don't like reading, I'm going to be reading this policy department for you for the East Cleveland Police Department, so that you will know what their department policy is when you are pulled over at a traffic stop. Okay. And also this will be for their officers to watch too, so that they'll know what their department policy is, just in case they try to say that they don't know what the policy is. Okay. So today on this first page, it says 151.01, first section of 151. It says policy, it shall be the policy of the East Cleveland Police Department to energetically take action in the enforcement of traffic laws in an effort to promote the safe and efficient flow of vehicular and pedestrian traffic. The ultimate goal of traffic law enforcement is to reduce the number of accidents, injuries, and fatalities by gaining the public's voluntary compliance with traffic regulations. This goal can be met by a combination of education. So the way that this goal can be completed for them to get, these accidents and injuries and fatalities down, the way that this goal can be completed is it can be met by a combination of education, enforcement, and engineering. So they'll need some form of education, some enforcement, and engineering, all geared towards gaining public compliance. So that education and engineering and enforcement will have to be toward gaining public compliance. So reasonable suspicion is number 2. That's the second thing that they'll be talking about in their policy, is reasonable suspicion. In the present context, the totality of the circumstance in each incident or situation that provides an officer with a particularized and objective basis for suspecting legal wrongdoing. So they have to be particular and objective. That it got to be, they got to have an objective basis for suspecting the legal wrongdoing. So they can't just go off a mere hunch. They can't just be like, oh, this person's looking from across the street. They said that they have to have a basis for suspecting legal wrongdoing. So if you're legal to be doing it and they just got a hunch that you're somebody else or anything of that sort, that's not what they go off here at East Cleveland Police Department. According to their department policy, they're not supposed to go off of that. Supposed to have a reasonable suspicion. The process allows officers to draw on their own experience and specialized training to make inferences from and deductions about the cumulative information available to them. So it also states here that officers will have to go off of their own experience, and not just their own experience, but they will have to go off of their own experience and specialized training to make inferences. So if you don't have any training besides the academy, to be a police officer, you got to be in the academy anyway, according to state or statutes. I would think you have to do some type of form of academy, but this doesn't say academy. This says you'll have to be able to make these inferences. You'll go off of experience. It's a combination of 2 things: experience and specialized training, to make these inferences from and deductions about the cumulative information available to them. So what's going on when you make this little hunch or anything, you have to have some specialized training in this too. You're not just going around making hunches or saying, oh yeah, I've been working on this job so long, I know that No. That's where specialized training come in though, because you don't know everything. So, um, here we go. It says reasonable suspicion is more than a hunch or feeling that an officer might have about an individual or circumstances. It is based on specific facts. So they got to have a fact and it got to be specific. The facts have to be specific. Specific. That when taken together with rational inferences, reasonably warrant the vehicle stop. So they got to have a reason to stop your vehicle, and they got to have it got to be a specific fact. They can't just make up this reason. If they try to make up a fact, that's not reasonable suspicion. That's still a hunch. They're just disguising it as reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion justifies a vehicular stop, but in order to arrest the motorist, passengers, or both, the officer must establish probable cause. See, so first reasonable suspicion, then probable cause. Okay, probable cause. In determining probable cause, the arresting officer must examine all of the factors and events leading up to the arrest and decide whether these facts, viewed from the standpoint of an objectively reasonable police officer, support the belief that an individual has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime. So an officer cannot just, in East Cleveland, per their policy here, states that an officer cannot just arrest you because if they don't have probable cause. They have to examine all of the factors and events leading up to the arrest. So by rolling your window up, that's not a factor to arrest someone or pull them out their car. That's not probable cause. Rolling the window up is not probable cause to arrest someone. It's not. So, this right here says the police officers support the belief that that an individual has committed. Okay, yeah. So them arresting you, they will have to also, with this probable cause, they'll have also have the fact that that the individual was about to commit or leading up to the arrest to decide whether these facts were viewed. Yep, in those facts, they would have to see in those facts that the individual has committed a crime, is committing a crime, or about to commit a crime. So if they say that, they can't just say, "Oh, I think because of their hunch this person's committed a crime." They have to have articulable facts to that suspicion. They got to have facts. They got to provide facts. So if they don't have any facts, their probable cause is non-void because they're just going off of a hunch. The enforcement of traffic laws is a basic responsibility of the police department. Uniform enforcement policies and procedures support the ultimate goal of traffic law enforcement, which is to achieve voluntary compliance with the laws by all motorists and pedestrians, consequently reducing accidents. The responsibility for enforcing traffic laws. And I'm going to zone this in. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Okay. The responsibility for enforcing traffic laws and regulations is shared by all uniformed patrol personnel. The role of the patrol officer is to observe, detect, and prevent violations of traffic laws and to take appropriate enforcement action when violations are observed. So when they are observed, they're going to prevent it when they observe it. Okay? So enforcement actions when violations are observed. Uniformed patrol officers are responsible for responding to traffic complaints within the city. in addition to enforcing violations that they may observe. Enforcement actions should be based upon a combination of professional judgment, professional, training, training, and experience in addition to written policy and procedure. So when the officers are making these stops, they have what they say professionalism comes into play, professional judgment comes into play, training comes into play, and experience in addition to policy and procedure. So when they pull someone over, all these things come into play. All on duty uniformed patrol officers shall take the appropriate enforcement action for each violation of traffic law witnessed or investigate alleged traffic violations reported to them. Let's go back up there. It says, all on-duty uniformed patrol officers shall take the appropriate enforcement action for each violation of traffic law witnessed or investigate alleged traffic violations reported to them. All enforcement actions shall be accomplished in a firm, fair, impartial, and courteous manner using one of the following three methods: verbal warning, citation, physical arrest. Number one is a verbal warning. Number two is a citation. Number three, being the last one, is a physical arrest. One of the following three methods. But they have to be, when they're doing this, they have to be firm, fair, impartial, and courteous mannered using one of the following three methods. So they still got to be all of those while using the following methods. The East Cleveland, number 5, the East Cleveland Police Department does not recognize traffic quotas as a traffic enforcement incentive. The goal of traffic enforcement activities should be the reduction of accidents and hazardous violators. All patrol officers are expected to be proactive in traffic enforcement activities. So they're expected to be proactive, even though times officers are reactive, but they're proactive in these traffic. They're expected in East Cleveland to be proactive in traffic enforcement activities, but they don't have a quota to meet here in East Cleveland, is what they're saying. Traffic law enforcement practices, number 100, I guess. It skips from 1 to 5 to 100. Okay, I don't know about that, but traffic law enforcement practices based on the principle that the most effective deterrent to traffic law violations is visible patrol in a marked vehicle, and in the interest of maintaining a posture of prevention as opposed to apprehension. So yeah, they rather prevent the traffic violation from happening than to apprehend. Traffic law enforcement activities will be conducted accordingly. Officer, where is that? Where are we at? Oh, no, here we go. Prevention conducted accordingly. Officers will operate patrol vehicles in accordance with existing laws and in such a manner as to demonstrate exemplary driving behavior. So that means they should be a good example of what good driving is on the road. The department will use radar and lidar in high or potentially high accident locations when speed is a factor in areas where speed limit violations are prevalent, and in response to citizens' complaints concerning speeding motorists. In those areas where fixed post observations is necessary to maximize the effectiveness of a selective enforcement effort, officers will park in a conspicuous location and in such manner that traffic flow is not impeded. Overt tactics may be used to slow traffic, remind citizens of their responsibilities to obey traffic laws, or observe, identify, and target particular problems. Officers should park vehicles to avoid a roadway or visibility obstruction. Radar may be effective employment during overt observations. So that's when they're where you can see them. They pull over and you can actually see them. They're not hiding and trying to get you like this. Covert tactics are normally used to conduct surveys or detect violations which would not occur if the officer's presence is known. Officers may use covert observations to detect and enforce violations. So, state statutes prohibit the use of unmarked vehicles or non-uniformed personnel who are on duty for the exclusive or main purpose of enforcing motor vehicle or traffic laws of this state. That's in the ORC, that's Ohio Revised Code, if you don't know what that is. So if they're in an unmarked car or non-uniformed personnel and they're on duty for the exclusive or main purpose of enforcing the motor vehicle or traffic laws, they can't do that. It prohibits them from being in unmarked cars or on the job but non-uniform. They are not able to, do any of this motor vehicle or enforce motor vehicle or traffic laws. That's what this policy says. It also states, according to the ORC, that they can't do that. The department will not initiate any roadside safety checks. So if you're on the side of the road, the police officers will not initiate any roadside safety checks. May I help you? That's a roadside safety check. This, according to your, your department says you will not initiate any roadside safety checks. So no, you may not help me. Legal basis for stopping motor vehicles. Officers have legal justification to stop a motor vehicle based on reasonable suspicion. We read what reasonable suspicion was. Officers are prohibited from stopping vehicles under the guise of legal authority when in fact the stop is based only on the officer's prejudice concerning a person's race, ethnicity, sex, or similar distinction. So how about you go look down there before I tow your car? This says the officer is prohibited from stopping vehicles under the guise of legal authority when in fact the stop is based solely on the officer's prejudice concerning a person's race, ethnicity, sex, or similar distinction. So whatever the officer's prejudice is against the person, that they're prohibited from doing this according to East Cleveland traffic policy, their departmental policy. A motor vehicle may be stopped only for a period of time that is reasonable to issue a citation or conduct other legitimate police business. Officers should avoid arrest. Officers should avoid arrest solely for minor vehicle infractions, even if permitted by law when a citation in lieu of arrest is a reasonable alternative. So officers shouldn't be coming to your car threatening you from across the street or at your car to take you to jail just because by their department policy, their thing is they're supposed to, in lieu of a citation, in lieu of an arrest, when the officer can just give a citation or a warning, that's what they more so want. They don't want the officer really arresting you. So they say according to their department. All traffic investigatory investigatory stops shall be called into the dispatch center by the initiating officer. So this is important right here. Number 5 is very important. All these are important. Number 5 is very important. It says all traffic and investigatory stops shall be called into the dispatch center by the initiating officer via radio prior to them approaching the stopped vehicle. So they shouldn't be calling in the car after they've made contact with the person. They're supposed to call the car in before initiating, prior to them approaching the stopped vehicle. So they're not supposed to, they're supposed to be doing they're supposed to call this car in before they even approach the vehicle. Okay? The initiating officer shall provide their unit number. So when they come to the car, they're supposed to say, hey, my unit number. Well, not to the car. This is what they're supposed to tell the dispatcher. The initiating officer shall provide their unit number, the location of the stop, type and color of the vehicle, state and registration plate number, and number of occupants to the dispatch center so the interaction may be documented in the CAD system and for officer safety. So this is the steps that you got to take first. Before they even come to a person's car, these are the steps that they first take when they come to your car. So, stopping and approaching traffic violators. The following procedures are to be followed whenever possible. Okay. It is recognized that varying conditions such as roadway constructions, volume of traffic, and the urgency of making vehicle stops may require officers to adjust these procedures particularly. Okay. Officers shall select an area that provides reasonable safety, avoiding curves, hills, heavily trafficked and poorly lit areas, and bad roads without shoulders. Whenever possible, the officer shall also avoid the use of private driveways, business locations, and areas where a large volume of spectators are likely to gather. When so equipped, and car video cameras shall be activated, and the body-worn camera policy shall be in effect. Number 17, body-worn cameras. We don't have that policy. We'll get that one. Okay. When a location has been selected for the stop, the officer prior to approaching the stopped vehicle shall notify the dispatcher of its nature. So the officer is supposed to tell the dispatcher what's the nature of the stop. Dispatcher, the nature of the stop, the location of the stop, type and color of the vehicle, state and registration plate number, and number of occupants. At the officer's discretion or dispatch center's request, additional information may be exchanged. So if the dispatch need more information other than that, or at the officer's discretion, they'll tell the dispatch more information, but they are supposed to give all this information. That's what it says here in their policy. At the desired location, the officer should signal the operator to stop at the far right of the roadway or at the safest shoulder by activating the overhead emergency light and sirens as necessary. On multi-lane roads, the officer may facilitate movement to the right shoulder by gradually changing lanes behind the violator until the right side of the roadway is reached. Should the violator stop abruptly in the wrong lane or location, the officer should instruct the driver to move by using appropriate hand signals or courteously using the vehicle public address system. Hey, can you pull over to the right? Thank you. Okay. All right. So once properly stopped, the officer should position the police vehicle about 20 to 30 feet behind the violator's vehicle and at a slight angle with the front approximately 2 feet to the traffic side of the violator's vehicle. At night, the spotlight should not be used to direct the violator, but may be used to illuminate the vehicle's interior once stopped by directing at the rear view mirror inside the violator's vehicle. The patrol vehicle should use its low beams if high beams would blind oncoming motorists. When exiting the patrol vehicle, the officer should be particularly alert to specific furtive movements or actions of the vehicle operator or passengers. Where possible, backup should be requested. So, approaching from the driver's side, the officer should be observant of the passenger compartment and stop at a point to the rear of the tailing edge of the left door in order to communicate with the driver. Where circumstances dictate, particularly where traffic is close enough to create a potential problem or when a high-risk approach is required, the officer may choose to approach the violator's vehicle from the right-hand side and stop at a trailing edge of the right front door. When the violator's vehicle has occupants in the rear seat, the officer should approach to a point near the leading edge of the left front door, being particularly observant of occupant movements and choosing a path that will not allow the occupants to thrust the door open against the officer. Okay, so stay out the way of the door. In two officer police vehicles, one of the two officers shall be responsible for radio communications, note taking, and relaying messages to the dispatch center. He or she will also act as an observer and cover for his or her fellow officer. As an officer may order passengers out of the vehicle pending completion of the stop. They may order them, hey, get out the car. I need you to get out the car. If deemed necessary for the officer's protection and safety, the driver and any or all passengers may be ordered out of the vehicle or directed to remain in the vehicle. If probable cause is established to search the vehicle, the belongings of passengers may also be searched, provided that the belongings are capable of concealing the type of object for which officers have probable cause to search the vehicle. Refer to 122, search and seizure. Where contraband fruits or instrumentalities of a crime are uncovered during the search of a vehicle, the driver and any and all passengers may be arrested in order to do so. The officers must have probable cause to believe that such passengers had common knowledge of and control over the illegal items or evidence, or were engaged in a common enterprise with the driver to conceal the fruits or evidence of a crime. So this is if it was used as a crime instrument and they're trying to hide it. Okay. Non-uniformed officers operating unmarked patrol vehicles with concealed emergency lights and sirens shall not normally make vehicle stops for traffic violations. In situations where failure to act would create unreasonable risk of injury, death, or significant property damage, such personnel shall contact the dispatch center to request a marked patrol unit to make the stop. Okay, so a non-marked car cannot make a stop on you. They have to call dispatch to make the stop. Depending upon the urgency of the situation, the officer in an unmarked police vehicle may activate emergency lights and siren to make a traffic stop. Non-uniformed officers operating vehicles not equipped with emergency lights or sirens shall not make a motor vehicle stop unless there is imminent danger of loss of life should they fail to act. In other less urgent cases that demand attention, officers shall contact the dispatch center, request that a marked patrol vehicle perform the stop, and assist in directing the marked unit to subject vehicle's locations. Okay, stopping and approaching vehicles. This is 151, 103. Stopping and approaching vehicles. This is the East Cleveland's Department Traffic Policy Department. Their traffic policies of their department, East Cleveland, Ohio's Police Department traffic policies. Okay, stopping and approaching vehicles. Stopping and approaching vehicle is not recommended, but in cases where a motorist must be stopped from oncoming traffic, the following actions may be taken. Drive the police vehicle to the extreme right portion of the roadway, and as the violator approaches, signal him or her to stop by using hand signals and emergency lights. Because of the potential hazard involved, an officer shall not leave his or her vehicle when attempting to stop oncoming motorists. If the subject motorist complies with the instructions, the police vehicle may then be turned around and appropriately positioned to the rear of the violator's vehicle. Oh no. Said like a gnat at a barbecue, man. Okay, should the motorist fail to comply with the officer's instructions, the officer should turn the vehicle around and pursue, stop, and approach the violator in prescribed manner. Refer to 104 motor vehicle pursuits. Okay. Stopping a following vehicle. When stopping a motorist to the rear of the police vehicle, the officer should drive to the right shoulder of the road, reduce speed, allow for the violator to pass, and then conduct a stop in accordance with the procedures outlined here. Okay. Making high-risk vehicle stop. The following procedures may be employed when an officer initiating a vehicle stop has reason to believe that the occupants may be armed and dangerous, or the circumstances could be considered of high risk. Okay, so this is what they're supposed to do when it's a high-risk vehicle stop. When planning to stop the suspect vehicle, the officer shall notify the dispatch center, describe the nature or reason for the stop, provide information on the vehicle as prescribed in 151.01. So they're supposed to do all them. I'm supposed to tell them all that 5 things because this is a high risk stop. And request the appropriate assistance. This if they think it's a high risk stop. Assistance to make the stop. An officer should not individually initiate high-risk vehicle stops unless backup units will not be available in an appropriate amount of time or the urgency of the situation demands immediate action. So they're not supposed to initiate in a high-risk vehicle stop unless backup units will not be available. So 101, they're not supposed to do this unless the urgency demands immediate action. So after selecting an appropriate location and with adequate support units in position, the officer should signal the suspect to stop. Officers shall then follow departmental training for vehicle positioning and removal and securing of occupants. Stopping oversized and overweight vehicles. In the event of an officer needs to stop a commercial and similar oversized or overweight vehicles, the following procedures should be followed. Select a location for the stop that provides enough room for the vehicle and sufficient stability to support the vehicle's weight and allow the operator sufficient time to distance to make the stop. Approach the cab from the rear using the driver's outside mirror to observe the driver and the activity in the cab. Never climb onto the vehicle to make contact with the operator. Maintain a position to the rear of the driver's door and ask him or her to exit the vehicle if and when necessary. Acts. Communication during traffic stops. Most persons form. Here we go. This is what most people would like to know. Right here is 151.107. Communication is very important, man. Communication is very important. Communication during traffic stops. Most persons form their perceptions of the police based on brief encounters with officers during stops for traffic violations. Therefore, officers should adopt a customer service and educational approach when dealing with otherwise law-abiding members of the public who have violated traffic laws. So, otherwise, besides this traffic law, they really haven't done anything. This approach includes the following measures. Introduce yourself and the police department that you work for. Specify the reason for making the vehicle stop. Specify. First off, introduce yourself. Hello, I am, and for the East Cleveland Police Department. Specify the reason I'm pulled you over because, and solicit the necessary documents. Get the necessary documents. Refrain from asking the violator if they know why they were stopped. It's refrain from doing that. A substitute for this question may be to ask the violator if they realize that they were committing the violation. So did you realize that you improperly backed? Did you realize that you ran that stop sign? Be courteous and respectful. Refrain from allowing the violator to dictate your level of professionalism. So don't let the person at the car dictate how you as an officer is going to be. You're supposed to come with a courteous manner because it's just a traffic stop. So, use command presence and confidence as compared to an aggressive or condescending approach, tone of voice or facial expression. So you're supposed to use confidence as compared to aggression. So you're not supposed to be coming all, yeah, I need this window down. You're supposed to come, hello, how you doing? I'm officer such and such. Maybe then that's how you get the person to be a little more okay. So then you can start finding out. Okay? So provide the violator with any information deemed appropriate to educate rather than lecture them about the infraction. So if they don't know what they did, you're supposed to be able to give them a little bit of information, like saying, not no long talk like, you shouldn't be doing this. Give them a little information. Hey, sir, you improperly backed. We're just trying to make sure that you're improperly back, hitting something, or you're blocking traffic right now. So we're just going to issue a ticket or a citation, letting you know that that won't really be tolerated, or we can't have that because, people's safety on the road. But, be positive, professional, and friendly, but not familiar, and avoid the use of language that provokes guilt, hostility, fear, or intimidation. So if a window is rolled down and you can hear the person and they have no tint on their window and you can see them, officer, keep tapping on someone's window. That's not being professional. That's not being friendly. And it's actually, let's move this over. It says actually that provokes guilt, hostility, fear, and or intimidation. So that was not professional. Ask if there are any questions concerning court dates and similar issues. When dealing with motorists who become troublesome, uncooperative, or argumentative, maintain an informative mode. So, informative mode. By using a calm, friendly, and assertive voice in which only information is provided. That's informative information. Never argue the validity of the stop or the citation at the scene of the stop. Refrain from ending the encounter with phrases such as "have a nice day." A reasonable substitution may be advise the violator to drive carefully. Issuing citations. When issuing a citation, conducting roadside sobriety tests, or conversing with the violator, the officer and other parties shall be positioned to the side of the road, clear of the motor vehicles. At no time shall the officer or others stand in front of, between, or behind the stopped vehicles. Officers should not arrest operators of motor vehicles. This is East Cleveland Police Department departmental guide. Officers should not arrest operators of motor vehicles for traffic violations in which a citation is authorized unless special circumstances exist or there is probable cause to believe that a more serious offense has been or is about to be committed. Okay. But not you provoking them though. Not provoking them for the situation to be made. Okay, so we're on page 5. Officers do not need cause to remove a violator from the vehicle to sit in the patrol car while a citation is being written. However, during the stop, unless other circumstances exist, it is recommended that the violator remain in his or her motor vehicle while the officer writes the citation or conducts other business. Violators should not be permitted to sit in patrol vehicles while citations are being prepared for other police business or other police business is being conducted. So, officers do not need a cause to remove a violator from the vehicle to sit in the patrol car while citation is being written. Okay? As they're saying in East Cleveland. However, during the stop, unless other circumstances exist, it is recommended that the violator remains in his or her own car. When preparing citations, the officer should position paperwork and related materials in a manner that allows him or her to maintain advantage over actions of the violator and other occupants. Upon the actual issuance of a citation, the violator, the issuing officer, shall explain the sections of the different sections of the citation to the violator. Violator's information, area information, what the violator was cited for, date, time of court appearance, waiver information if applicable. The issuing officer should request the violator's phone number and signature on the citation. In most cases, if the violator refuses to sign, indicate their refusal by printing "refused" on the citation signature line. So it says right here that if a person, according to East Cleveland Police Department, that if the person refuses, it doesn't say arrest them. It says if the person refused to sign by printing "refused" on the citation's signature line. That's department policy. It doesn't say arrest them for refusing the signature. Their department says to write "refused" on the line. Okay? It says warnings. Based on an officer's discretion, a verbal warning may be an appropriate alternative in response to minor infractions committed in those areas where traffic accident experience is minimal. So if accidents don't usually even happen over here, and I seen you doing something that was just a minor infraction, I'm just gonna give you a warning, man. Get up out of here. I could do that at the officer's discretion. So, citation The traffic citation should be issued to those violators who jeopardize the safe and efficient flow of vehicular and pedestrian traffic, including hazardous moving violations, parking violations, and operating unsafe and or improperly equipped vehicles. Okay, so they said they should write them a citation for that stuff. Okay, so if a person drunk driving, the officer most likely gonna write you a citation and get you up out of that car. Okay, physical arrest. Persons charged with criminal traffic offenses should generally be released on a citation. So criminal traffic offenses should generally be released on a citation as opposed to being taken into custody, unless one or more of the following conditions exist, in which case the violator may be taken into custody. The offense charged is OVI, then they take them into custody. The violator refuses or fails to sufficiently identify him or herself or supply required information. So if they don't give you their information, then you could take them to jail. The violator is wanted on a current or confirmed warrant. So when you run their name and they show in the system that they have a warrant for their arrest, then you could take them to jail. Not for rolling up their window or not rolling their window all the way down. Traffic enforcement tolerance and latitude. Uniform enforcement is a critical element of an effective traffic law enforcement program. Strict enforcement should be impartially administered, and guidelines are provided to encourage all officers to enforce the same law in the same manner. So if the officer catches someone drunk driving or has an open container in their car, and then they come to your car and suspect you of drunk driving or having an open container, they shouldn't just let someone go, because it says right here, a part of East Cleveland's departmental policy says whenever the investigating officer detects a violation of a traffic law and when evidence exists to satisfy all the elements of the particular violation, enforcement action should be taken. OVI, speed violations, and when deciding to issue citation warnings for speed, I just went all over OVI. All persons for which probable cause exists to charge with driving while under the influence should be arrested and charged according to the East Cleveland Codified Ordinance. Okay, for OVIs. Speed violations. When deciding to issue a citation warnings for speed violations, officers should consider the conditions listed below. The conditions, while not all inclusive, are designed to give some guidance to officers when determining what type of enforcement action should be taken. Weather conditions, traffic accident data, roadway conditions, citizen or other types of complaints. Hazardous violations are violations that expose a person or property risk, loss, or damage. Examples could include running a red light or stop sign, careless driving, speeding violations, child restraint violations, seatbelt violations, and reckless driving. Hazardous violations may justify a citation in many cases. However, the officer may use discretion and issue a verbal warning depending upon the circumstances. For example, good driving record, reason for the violation, or reason for the violation. Okay, non-hazardous. So that means if a person's like, they usually drive with a kid in the car seat, and someone didn't on that particular day have their car seat. Officer like, this person probably usually do have their kids in the car seat. So, and they got a good record. I don't see a lot of stuff on there. So I'm going to just come issue them a warning and let them know, get that baby in the car seat. Okay. Non-hazardous violations are violations that are not likely to involve or expose persons or property to risk, loss, or damage. There are no points assessed for non-moving violations, and with the exception of some parking and pedestrian violations, non-moving violations are considered non-hazardous. Officers using discretion may cite or warn for non-hazardous violation violations. Equipment violations. Officers using discretion may cite or warn for equipment violations. Public carriers and commercial vehicles. Public carriers and commercial vehicles, including buses, taxis, limos, commercial trucks, etc., are subject to various laws and regulations not applicable to private vehicles. Officers should maintain a working knowledge of these specific laws and regulations. No special consideration should be given to public carriers and commercial vehicles in enforcement enforcement of traffic laws. Suspended or revoked driver's license. So if your license is suspended or revoked, officers should consider that information on suspended or revoked driver's license is obtained from automated computer files and may be subject to entry or cancellation errors. In circumstances where there is a question as to the actual status of a motorist driving privilege, the violator should be released on a citation. Officers should compare the date of the suspension to the date of the issuance on the license to ensure that the suspension date is after the issuance date. A suspension date, which is before the issue date of the license, may indicate that the suspension has been cleared but not removed from the computer, or that they have obtained a license by fraudulent means. Pedestrians, officer will take appropriate enforcement action when and where pedestrian violations are observed. The enforcement of traffic law pertaining to pedestrians necessitates board discretion from individual officers. To provide guidance in the discretion, the following procedures are established, which should result in more uniform and consistent application of the law. Officers should concentrate their efforts on pedestrian violations in those areas where pedestrian accidents have been frequent and severe. Served. Bicycle enforcement. The use of bicycle as a major means of transportation, both for business and recreation, as a result in the increase in traffic accidents involving bicycles and an attendant increase in fatal and personal injury accidents. It is inherent in the role of the police to enforce those laws relating to the safe operation of bicycles. In this regard, officers have a unique challenge with regard to their discretion in applying those laws. The following procedures are guidelines to discretion, which should result. See, notice on certain parts they say it's the officer's discretion. Well, on other parts they say what the officer should do or what their policy is. In those areas where congestion and frequent of traffic accidents involving bicycles have been predominant, those laws pertaining to the proper operation of bicycles should be strictly enforced. On those arteries with a substantial flow of vehicular traffic and where hazardous moving violations are observed involving persons operating bicycles, the applicable laws should be enforced. It's just a traffic law stuff, y'all. So if y'all ever stop by them for traffic, okay. This is about bicycles, man. I can read that. Officers assigned to crime prevention, off-road recreational vehicles. So if they got the removal of unlicensed vehicles from the traffic roadway, recreational vehicles also pose a certain level of danger to officers, the public at large, and themselves. Officers are to exercise a great amount of caution and use good professional judgment when attempting any type of enforcement involving off-road vehicles. Officers should be aware of all applicable laws and take appropriate enforcement actions when applicable under departmental policies. Oh shoot, see? What the heck is that? Okay. Off-road. The following options should be considered when dealing with off-road recreational vehicles: removal of unlicensed vehicles from traffic way, using the least coercive among reasonable alternatives when dealing with juvenile offenders, preventing the misuse of public areas, parks, and trails, preventing the improper use of street and highway crossings, dealing attentively with citizen complaints of excessive noise, trespassing, or property damage. Multiple violations. Officers should exercise discretion when dealing with multiple violations, generally ticket. Padding is not appropriate for acceptable practice. So, ticket padding is not an appropriate or acceptable practice. However, officers should be aware of the need to take proactive enforcement action for certain secondary citations. So, a secondary citation, ticket padding is just like trying to just put every charge on this paper or whatnot. They're saying if you pull them over for something, which is like a out tail light, right? And you notice that they have no seatbelt on, then be aware and be aware of the need to take proactive enforcement action for certain secondary citations. So like non-seatbelt. So I pulled you over for a tail light, and okay, your muffler is loud, this, that, or the third. But I am gonna say, okay, this person doesn't have a seatbelt on. This person, this accident was caused because this person was distracted driving using a cell phone. Citations issued for a seatbelt and driver's license violations are not considered excessive and do not constitute ticket padding. Officers are encouraged to take the time to issue these secondary citations. Okay. Newly enacted laws and regulations. Officers should consider issuing warnings for violations for any newly created statute or regulation when the violator appears unaware of the law or regulation. So they saying if they appear unaware of it, then generally warnings should be issued during the first 30 days after the enactment of a new traffic statute or regulation. Seatbelt and child restraint violations. Recognizing the important role of seatbelts and child restraint devices play in saving lives and reducing injuries, the Cleveland Police Department has a preferred citation policy for these types of violations. Further citations for this offense are not considered padding. Seatbelts, child restraint. So they saying it's to the officer's discretion, but in these, so like in those padding situations where they just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna charge them with everything I could charge. Let me hype up these charges. Okay, they don't agree with that, but they're saying for safety in East Cleveland that seatbelts and child restraint is what they Okay, there we go. And nobody with special privileges, violation of the Ohio traffic law shall not be afforded special consideration and shall be warned, cited, or arrested as any other violator, for sure. Okay, this is a driver's license reexamination. I think everybody know about that. Officer will complete the request for driver's license examination. Okay, yeah. That's everything there, man. So if y'all need a copy of this, just hit me up if you ever been pulled over by East Cleveland police officer. Need a copy of the traffic guidelines or whatever that they're supposed to be following here. Not coming to your car rude. I think this kind of states, kind of gives you the understanding of how what an officer can and cannot do, and what's required of them in their department. East Cleveland Department policy says the officer is supposed to come up to your car as a customer service person, and also keep in mind that people have encounters with the police that before you, even if it was brief, that it particularly may have been done wrong. So your job is not to think every person is a criminal, because that's prejudice. Just because they have committed some type of traffic violation does not make them a criminal. So when you come up to their, when you approach their vehicle, the first thing on your mind, once you've approached their vehicle and you took all your first, you gotta first take your first safety measures, and that's by just observing the movement, what the person's saying, also what kind of car it is, by telling dispatch this, by articulating this to dispatch, that the person is only one person in the car, the reason is a traffic stop for this reason or that reason, and then approach the vehicle. Some officers put their thumb or fingerprint on the vehicle, then it's hello, how you doing? Hello, I'm officer such and such. Did you realize that you were going this fast? Did you realize that you hit something? Did you realize? Hit them with a question. Now, nowhere in in this traffic department policy, nowhere does it say in here that the first thing you do is come and tell the person what you need. I need a lot of things. I need you to not pull me over for a crime I didn't commit. I need you to tell me why you're pulling me over. I need you to tell me this, that, or the third. We both need things here, sir. So what's the difference in what you need and what I need? See, so that's called de-escalation. So they don't have de-escalation in here, but that's what it basically leads to. So if you need any, again, I'm gonna be done with this video. It's probably pretty long. I don't know actually the amount of time, but if you need the East Cleveland Police Department traffic policy, it's been their adopted policy since January 1st of 2018. It's been effective since 2018 that this is how their officers are supposed to come to your car. Their officers are not supposed to have practices of if they don't have any reasonable suspicion, they shouldn't be making threats to you just to get you pulled over, things of that sort, because traffic violators is to protect the flow of traffic and hazardous situations. So this is your boy Dom. I'm just here with Politically Raw, and we're helping people to learn the traffic policy of East Cleveland's police department. And y'all have a good day. It's been real.